Okay, year 13, 5-minute revision coming at you. Here we go with this question. Statement is, parties play a less important role in the US Congress than in the UK Parliament. We know traditionally that the UK Parliament has been much more dominant in regards to the role of political parties than perhaps the more individualistic nature of the US Congress. But we have to consider what we mean by role. What do they perform? And I've got three here. 1, sustaining governments. 2, providing a cohesive policy agenda, and 3, representing the views of the nation. Let's have a consideration of these now, please. Okay, so down here, if we were talking about one role of the political parties forming and sustaining governments, that's certainly the case in the United Kingdom, with the majority party in the House of Commons forming the government, the Prime Minister being the leader of the majority party, and parliamentary power being really the basis of executive power. So you can contrast nicely there the difficulties of May not having necessarily control of Parliament due to not having a majority versus the President Johnson 90 majority being quite effective. The one thing we could say is there is capacity for Parliament for the removal of government through a vote of no confidence. You compare that to the United States, and the executive is elected completely separately to the legislature. The main focus of the legislature is to challenge and scrutinise the government, and therefore they're able to remove the president also through impeachment. It would seem that the party's role is not necessarily to form or to sustain governments in place. The only counter to that, I would say most recently, is when Biden was talking about the fact that he wanted his own people in Senate rather than in his cabinet because it could help him with his agenda. There may be the case that in the past parties have been beneficial from the president's success in terms of midterm or main elections, but that certainly wasn't the case in the most recent presidential elections, and where many congressmen were trying to distance themselves from Trump, if anything. So we can see here that it's clearly the UK which is the key in terms of parties forming sustaining governments compared to the US. If we talk about cohesive policy agendas, again in the UK, parties play a significant role. The manifesto is the basis of the electoral mandate in which a government can rule. The government party drives the business of Parliament through using its political party, and party discipline is really the essence of dictating policy decisions in regards to debates that exist and also divisions. Compared to the United States, and really, again, the cohesive policy agenda is varied. The House, at times, the House of Representatives can be a periodic agenda setter, with the Speaker being a main player. In 1994, with the contract with America, Newt Gingrich played that role, and we have seen this again at periodic moments, but not consistently. They can provide the support through party action in terms of supporting executive initiatives such as Obamacare. But in reality, there's no consistent process for a manifesto created in either chamber, and increased partisanship really stalls rather than drives policy within there. So party isn't there necessarily as a positive force, as you may be arguing in the UK. We look at our third point. Parties are essential for coherently representing the views of the nation. So if we start here with the UK, certainly party voting certainly comes before constituency interests in most cases. Most MPs are defined by the party they actually represent rather than the constituency they come from. Now you could argue that's changed over time and rebellions have emerged over the last number of governments, but really what we'd always say is it's more likely to be the case that the representation is representation of party interest in the UK. Accountability certainly seems to be at party level at elections. So parties still play a key role in their representative role within the Parliament, the House of Commons. In the US, you would have to say that parties are considered to be less relevant in terms of representation. Constituency issues, constituency representation is much more at the forefront, with congressional representatives much more responsive to the needs of their own constituency, either be a state or a district, because the electoral cycle kind of demands this. I would argue that the party label is more of an umbrella for the diversity of opinion across the United States and doesn't necessarily signify what the representative actually believes, because a congressman from Massachusetts, it's going to be very difficult for a congressman from Texas. So therefore, when you look at it, you can see the roles are very significantly different between Congress and Parliament. Good luck.